Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to today's Tivoli User Community webcast. Our topic for today is, are you managing your backup enterprise or is it managing you? Our expert speaker for today is Steve Wright, Sales Engineer at Rocket Software. All phone lines are in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer session with instructions given at that time. You may also ask a question at any time using the chat window located in the control panel. Chat questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. The session today is being recorded, and you will be provided a copy of today's materials following the call. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Steve. Take it away, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. Like Jennifer said, my name is Steve Wright. I work with Rocket Software. I've been in the backup industry now for about 16 years in consulting and for the most part in a consulting position, working for various companies. But anyway, what we're going to talk about today is the fact that backup environments grow. That's just what they do. And right now they tend to diversify. The average backup, enterprise backup environment doesn't just have one product anymore, it has multiples. And without a tool to manage that, it's almost like being an over-the-road trucker without a GPS system. I mean, sure, if you're a good driver, you're going to get your load from point A to point B, but the GPS allows you to pick the most efficient route. It allows you to avoid like the heavy traffic. It allows you to deal with changing conditions like road closures and so forth much more efficiently. And what we're going to talk about is how in today's mixed environment where you might have TSM and some data domain devices and some other backup products, I think the average company now has 7 according to Gartner, you really need that tool to manage that whole enterprise. And so that's the purpose of our, or the reason for our title here is, are you managing your backup enterprise or is it managing you? And we're going to talk about what the backup enterprise is like today. This is probably something you're experiencing now or something you will experience in the future. And how you stay afloat, how you stay in charge of that and thrive in that environment. All right, hopefully everybody's seeing my screen okay here. And again, just like we talked about, enterprise backups just aren't simple anymore. And these days, backups are rarely one product fits all. So maybe you've got TSM as your top tier product and you've been using it for years, you're an expert at it. But in the past few years, you've probably found some other technologies creeping into your enterprise. I've seen some statistics from IBM that about 60% of TSM customers have data domain. And then quite often you'll see a couple of companies merge together and they'll also have some net backup, some Avamar, some other backup product that's in there, maybe a niche product like Veeam. But that's the reality of your environment. You have all these different products. You need to be able to manage them because you're not managing all systems. You're not going to be able to be an expert in all of these different products. And data growth is inevitable. It's also uncontrollable. But you still have to be able to protect everything you have, and you still have to manage that environment. And like it says on the 4th item there, if you want to keep your company out of the headlines, you just got to make sure your data is protected and make sure that you met your SLAs and your legal requirements. That's for your company, for you, for your career, for all those reasons. You've got to stay on top of what's happening in your backup enterprise. Whether you're a C-level person who manages that enterprise, or whether you're a person like myself who's working in the trenches and is responsible for making sure that everything happens correctly. You've got to have the tools to see what's going on there. And you're going to have to spend money on backup and disaster recovery or business continuity or whatever you call it or whatever level you work with at your corporation or your job. But can you do the same with less money? And are you really using the money that you have responsibly? And can you really make the case to ask for more? And so you have to be able to handle uncontrolled data growth, but with a team that does not grow every time something changes or something new pops in. So just like we talked about, modern backup enterprise, you got your data center, maybe that's where you're running TSM, you've always ran TSM there. But then you brought in this remote office, and it uses some other backup product, and maybe the Oracle DBAs or the MS SQL DBAs decided they wanted to start doing backups directly to a dedupe device or some other device. You still like to know why they're using so much storage. You still like to know what's happening, but you're not an RMAN expert. You're not an MS SQL expert. And maybe you have got to have some other services doing replication. And of course, you've got, again, data on the cloud. You've got maybe a Veeam being used for the VMs. And all these different products have crept into your environment. And again, maybe you've got data domains out there. Maybe you've got, Protect here, or any of the other devices out there that are deduplication devices. They're all in your enterprise. And it'd be nice to have one window to look at all of that because you're not an expert on all of it. And again, just kind of driving the point home, that modern heterogeneous environment, as we call it, it comes from a lot of different sources. DBAs just want to fully control their backups. Their data is their job. And if they're writing directly to dedupe devices, which is a very efficient way, frankly, to handle those backups, if the DBAs insist on having control, you're still in charge of the storage probably. The VM admins might want that, special niche software that they've heard about that's commonly being used. Managers of specific storage devices are going to use the replication or snapshot options. And maybe you just acquired a company that's heavily invested in some other backup product, which you don't know, but you don't have the budget to put TSM in there, and also replacing, when you have, business continuity disaster recovery requirements and, maintaining old backup requirements, you can't just insert a new backup product and start from scratch. It takes a plan. It's hard to do. Sometimes it never happens. And again, remote offices might be somebody out there who just wants a simpler backup solution, and they've invested in that. And maybe you've just got a data center manager with his or her favorite backup solution that they've used in the past. They use it very well. They're very good at it. But again, if you want to manage that effectively, you need to know what's happening in the whole enterprise. And again, as I said before, it's kind of like driving a truck over the road without having GPS, without having the tools to do it the most efficient manner, going into areas that you're not personally acquainted with, and figuring out what's happening while it's happening, which a good GPS system will do, because it'll actually connect up and tell you where the traffic is, where the detours are, and so forth. So the data you must protect always grows, but your budget doesn't. And again, we all know this, but corporate data continues to grow exponentially. I mean, we could all tell stories about, depending on how long you've been in the IT world, but like when I started, a site with a company with a terabyte of data was a pretty good sized company. And now a nice laptop has a terabyte of storage in it. So things are just changing like crazy. It's and those sources of growth are just not in your control. According to some statistics I looked up, 66% of data is created or captured by consumers or workers, which is not you, and yet corporate enterprises have responsibility for protecting the majority of it. So you don't get to control that growth. You don't get to decide what people have out in your enterprise, but you do have to protect it. So you can't control that data growth, but you can analyze it and assign different levels and cost of protection to it based on that content if you have the tools to to manage what you have and to look at what's out there and to use those tools most efficiently. So of that data that you're responsible for, not all of it is equal. Some of it, yeah, you've got to be able to reproduce it, but you don't have to keep a long history of it. Sometimes you have data owners that really care about the data, and you don't want to teach them the backup tools. You don't want to give them a login, but you'd like to give them some access to what's happening in the backup world. Again, that's what a good enterprise management tool gives you. And you just need those analytical abilities. When you're going up to management and asking for another $100,000 worth of equipment, you need the kind of reports that they understand. Other than that, you're going to take up a big sheaf of information. They're going to look at you kind of over their desk, not really sure that's where they should be spending their money. And you need the right tools to talk to them, their kind of talk, give them that overview, and prove to them very quickly that, yes, it really is what you need. You've done the analysis. You have used this tool to figure out exactly what's best for your entire enterprise. And this really is what has to happen. So again, you get a tool like this, you can do things like you can find out what your largest or your longest running or your slowest backups are. You can take a look at your backup resources, your tape drives if you're still using them, even with their VTLs, and see exactly when they're being used. I mean, how helpful is a chart like this if you're not meeting your backup windows? Pull up a chart and just take a look and see what resources are available at that time. Maybe there's none, but maybe there's some. Maybe you can shuffle things around a bit and open things back up so you don't have to buy new resources. You can utilize what you have more efficiently. And enterprise reporting, like we've been talking about, just makes that heterogeneous environment of yours manageable. Again, as we talked before, you're smart people out there. We're all smart. We can learn a lot of different products. But there's going to be some that we spent a majority of our career on, and others we're just going to touch on to the extent that we have to or are forced to. And again, you get that enterprise tool that looks at all of them, and now everybody in your enterprise, regardless of what their background is, has the same analytical abilities to see what's happening in the entire enterprise. So again, this enterprise monitoring tool empowers all users. So your CTOs can get grasps at a high level over the enterprise. Your CFOs can get a view of the cost of backups with the option to charge departments for usage. That's kind of important too. I mean, I know when I was working as a consultant, I went into a very large company, and there had been a problem doing a restore. In the backup world, you never get in trouble for not doing a backup, but you get fired for not being able to do a restore. And they just didn't have the data to do this restore. So while I was there, the executives of whatever the IT community had gotten together, and they sent down a note saying that we needed to keep all backups of everything for a minimum of 1 year. So it didn't take long. I just went through and I looked at that, and I did some quick math based on what they were doing at that moment. I figured out on a spreadsheet how many new tapes you're going to have to buy, and basically that new rule of theirs was going to cost them $1 million. And so we sent that note back saying we needed $1 million worth of new resources, plus offsite storage for more data, plus on-site storage possibly for more tapes. And they changed their mind because they were able to make that assessment based on the data I gave them. And again, if you get a tool that is watching your environment, this allows you to do that analysis much quicker, or it allows them to do that analysis because it's not a spreadsheet that I put together. It's actually a report that they can see that's been nicely polished. They can recreate it. They can customize it themselves. They can do whatever they need with it to get the data that they want. And again, it's not just the C-level people. You can deal with system owners. Often need to get confirmation of their backups without accessing the backup products. Like I said, those DBA or maybe a Exchange admin, they want to know about their backups. They're very important, especially if you're an Exchange admin. If your backups don't run, your logs don't truncate, you can run out of disk space, which is a real problem. And so they tend to really care about their backups. There's always somebody in a large organization who really cares about their backups. So you get a product where they can log into and they can see things from their screen without getting into the product. Now you've empowered them. You can send them an email from that product. You can give them access to that product. You can make sure all the right people are getting all the right information based on their level within the company, based on their needs, based on their ability to understand it. And of course, the backup admins, and I know that's a large part of my audience here. I apologize for that phone in the background. As backup administrators, we need to get that detailed, very granular information on exactly what's happening so we can do our analysis, we can make our jobs easier, so we can figure out problems before they happen. All right. So enterprise reporting, things you're looking for are things like chargeback, showback, efficiency. I'm just going to run through these real quick because we kind of talked about this, but efficiency, your physical tape devices, your data growth, data retention. You need to be able to customize reports, and again, that's critical because your needs are not going to be the same as the needs of the company down the street or even other companies within your area. So You need to be able to get to do analysis your way, based on your needs and based on your enterprise environment. You need to know what your slowest backups are. You need to be able to report by, I mean, if you have 5,000 backup nodes in your environment that are backed up by different products and different places and different times, you need to be able to divide those out. Divide them out based on what you need, like maybe on system tier, maybe on the application that's running on that system, maybe by business unit or by region or by data center or by department. Again, a lot of different ways you want to take that environment and slice and dice it, but you don't want to be limited by the backup system. You don't want to be limited by the physical location. You need to slice and dice that enterprise the way you need to slice and dice it. So again, with the enterprise reporting tool, with a click, you can get a graph that shows you everything that's happening in your backup world, give you a quick history. So you can analyze today's problems and see how they relate to problems in the past. Again, you can look at your existing storage and number of clients and see how that's growing. And again, if you can do predictions based on history and what's happening today, that allows you to kind of plan for the future. If you have a large environment, you need something like this, a report maybe you can put up on a knock wall where your entire team can be informed of what's happening in the environment, whether they know what these different devices are or not. Whereas they walk past, they can see what's happening, or maybe it's not on a knock wall, maybe it's just on your system and you check it a couple times a day, or maybe the person you have who works like the night shift and is mostly just changing out tapes and handling emergency calls. Maybe they don't know that much about the backup system. They haven't been there so long, so this gives them a view as to when something is going wrong. And of course, in a lot of industries these days, it's just a fact. We got to keep it legal. We got to meet service level agreements. So there are just a lot of different rules and regulations that you may have to meet, like, of course, legal rules, especially financial health organizations, internal audits, SLAs. Like maybe you have a requirement that you need a 94% backup success rate. You've got disaster or business continuity protection. Got to make sure that's all in place in case worse comes to worse. And again, like we've talked about with that ever-expanding environment and different rules for different systems, a project is needed that can report on all those systems to that single pane of glass so that you can see it from one place and that all interested parties, regardless of whether they're a technical or managerial resource, can see what's happening and analyze what's happening to the degree that they need. And of course, and to maintain that DRM business continuity, you've got to proactively manage your backups, and you need to fix problems, or you need to fix problems before they actually turn into big problems. And again, you need to figure out how to increase your backup capacity if you're not meeting your backup window, and you need to be notified immediately if an issue does occur, and have the tools to figure out why it occurred and how to avoid it happening in the future. And hope everybody's still awake out there. But of course, the big question is, if you've heard this and you're interested, the big question is, how much is this really worth? How we don't just get money to spend on IT anymore just because stuff is cool or looks shiny. And but again, there's every company that has a enterprise reporting tool will probably give you a little different answers to why they have it and why they never want to be without it again, and why it's worth maintaining maintenance every year. But every company has a reason. And things like, your data's protected, but could you protect it with less resources? And again, just like getting a GPS system is not very expensive if you're over the trucker compared to everything else you've got. But it's going to save you a lot of money. It's going to pay itself off several times over, just in terms of efficiency and time and fuel usage. And of course, time's still important to us because we don't want to work till 8 o'clock every night. And our fuel is storage. We have to use it efficiently. And again, with that growing complexity and cost of backup and storage enterprises, which if you're not seeing right now, you will be seeing, or if you move someplace at some point in your career, you're going to see, because it's definitely extremely common out there, and it's pretty much the norm. Like it or not, those enterprises are going to grow. They are going to grow more complex. So you just have to manage it. You can manage it or just keep spending more money on it, and management is a better choice for everybody involved. And of course, are your current team members just plain getting burned out by tedious day-to-day operations because you can't get that other team member approved for hire that you really could use? So you get an enterprise backup monitoring tool, and it takes away a lot of that tedious work. It empowers you and the rest of your engineers to do more with less and utilize the expertise you were hired for. I know at one company I worked for recently as a senior backup admin, we were doing outsourcing, and so we had to both prove we were doing backups to all of our customers, and we had to charge them back for those backups. Well, I spent there was just no efficient way to do this with what we had. We had two different backup products. We had TSM and Backup. No efficient way to do this, so I handled one of those tools, and I spent, as a senior backup admin, making a decent salary, I spent 4 to 5 hours a week. I mean, that's the majority of a day that I spent putting together spreadsheets and making reports, and I got to tell you, I did not enjoy that. That's not what I got into IT for, is to put together spreadsheets. And now with the backup reporting tool that we got, I could do all of those reports, set them up ahead of time, probably spend a couple days putting the reports together, but once I had them automated, that 4 hours a week went down to about 15 minutes a week, literally just quickly making sure everything was there and emailing stuff out. So again, I don't know what your environment is. Maybe you have that kind of tedious work, maybe you don't. Maybe it only comes up once in a while. But with an enterprise reporting product, you're going to have a history of what's happening in your enterprise. You're going to have a tool that allows you to run all the complex queries and so forth that you want and create the reports that you need. And like I mentioned before, nobody ever worries about backups just for stores. But the reason why you're there is because that is critical and it's valuable, and your backups are just as critical and valuable as that data. So again, this is it's another worker in your environment. It's an insurance policy. It's a way to manage costs. And most people who get a product like this find out that it does pay itself off, and generally relatively quickly and definitely over time. The other thing you get with an enterprise reporting tool is what you might call a backup health check in a box. And again, as your company grows and you realize that your backups enterprise is getting out of control, you've just been adding more data, quite often a company will choose to do a health check. And this was what I did as a consultant. And companies would spend a lot of money to bring me in and analyze their enterprise, see what they're doing wrong, see how they can do things better. And I would then, after spending about a week on site gathering information, a week on site analyzing, give them a report, and I could often open their eyes to a lot of things, because even though they were really good backup people, they tended to be focused on what they were doing that day. Whereas as a consultant who'd been to 100 different companies, I could analyze it and tell them what was going on. And no, I'm sorry, I'm not bragging there, just the difference between working in one environment all day, working in a lot of environments. But you get a good enterprise reporting tool. It's kind of like getting a backup health check right there for you. And I'll give you an anecdote on that. Is again, I spent years doing health checks, and companies spent a lot of money to get me on site and to write up very voluminous reports for them. And again, I gave them good information, so that they generally got their money's worth out of having me on site. But I did the exact same thing for a company using a backup enterprise tool recently, and instead of spending 2 weeks, I just installed the product, I let it collect the data, and then with some customized reports and so forth, what used to take me 2 weeks took me, literally like about a day to put together a report, grab some screenshots of some analytical graphs, put it all together in a readable format, and I'm done. And anybody at that site could have done the same thing, because now they don't have to wait for someone to come in, that they don't do things they don't have time to do, which is like collect all the data, which they could do, never have time to do, collect all that data, put it into spreadsheets. With a backup enterprise reporting tool, that data is always collected, it's always waiting for you, and you can always create those reports yourself to see what's happening and make your environment run more efficiently. So again, how does that translate in various money symbols? Well, it's a product investment. You're going to, say product license and maintenance, depending upon your enterprise. You're going to save time. You can throw about any number in there depending upon the company. Some companies just are going to save a lot of time. Um, and often you're going to save time with your more expensive team members. And of course, hardware resources. Big deal. I mean, disk is cheap. It seems like it's always getting cheaper, but on the other hand, you keep getting more complex devices, and some devices are more expensive than others. You got to be able to manage all those devices in your enterprise. So again, just what we talked about, that enterprise reporting tool protects your priceless data. So enterprise reporting costs some amount of money, but protecting your data is priceless. And all that money you spend on your enterprise is worthless if you can't recover the data when you need it most. So you want to ensure your data is protected. Empower system owners to verify that protection of their servers, because they're the ones who are going to scream like crazy if that backup environment is blind to them and they can't do a restore when they need it. They need to know what's happening, and they need to be empowered to find that for themselves, so they're not relying upon you. It identifies problematic trends so you can fix them before they endanger your recovery plan. Again, got to be able to do restores. Don't always care about backups, but got to be able to do restores. Can't do those without backups. And again, when business critical data is lost, it affects people from every level of the organization. And you might have those SLAs or legal compliance requirements. Now, how do you prove to auditors they're being met, or that you've taken all the steps you need to meet them? But the real question is, if you have a diverse backup enterprise, which is always expanding and always requiring more resources, can you afford not to have a centralized management tool, something that looks at that whole enterprise? Because if you don't have the ability to analyze and manage your entire backup enterprise, again, going back to the title here, you're not really managing it. It's managing you. You're just writing it. You're just trying to survive what's happening versus really getting your arms around all of it at one time and making sure that you're managing it all correctly. And if you're making important buying decisions without complete analytics to support them, how can you be sure you're making the right choices? Again, it's always easy to ask for more equipment, but if later on somebody says, oh, hey, I did an analysis, we didn't need it, it's not good for anybody. All right, I feel funny talking all this time without having any questions, but so I've been sort of talking about the issue, and now I have a solution here. I work for Rocket, and our product, which probably everyone has heard about, is Servergraph Professional. And again, it's reporting, alerting, and a lot more. It kind of does everything we talked about earlier. In fact, it does do everything we talked about earlier. And it's just a solution for your entire data protection. It alerts you as problems occur by text, email, tweet, or you can use it to open a trouble ticket and remedy. Again, it gets the right information to the right people in a concise manner and a way they can understand it, either at a high level or at a very detailed level. And it gives you that predictive analysis that allows you to prepare for conditions before they occur, like capacity planning reports that show growth trends. It allows for budgeting, so you can make purchases, intelligent purchases. And again, it's just a single application that takes everything from your company and puts it out in a manner that everyone can understand. Management dashboards, internet, shows status, what's happening. Different users can use it, the user reports. You can do chargeback. And for TSM, there is a soup to nuts administration product, which is a very good product. I haven't really talked about it much because, again, we're kind of focusing on heterogeneous. But if you are a TSM admin, there's an excellent tool there that not only allows the experienced admins who like command line to do more, but also specifically allows sort of the junior people to do more. And very simple architecture to what we do with Servergraph. We have a single server. It talks to all the different devices in your enterprise, pulls information from them, puts them into our database, keeps that data for as long as you want it, and then gives you a wide array of canned reports to look at, or you can create as many customized reports as you want. We actually include an analytical tool called CoreView with the product that gives you the full capability of creating your own reports from our database. And again, key components, kind of covered this already, but you've got your dashboards and reports and emails, lots of different ways to deliver that information to the right people in the right format. You've got the report builder that gives you the ability to use CoreView to create reports, and there's two different customized report builders. One kind of for people who just want a quick ad hoc report, and there's a wizard that leads them through every step of the way. And then there's a more advanced report builder for those who really want to get into it and dig down a little deeper and make some very complex reports and graphs. We filter the data for users. Kind of touched upon this, but you can create a thing called a scope. And a scope is a group of nodes. We don't care what kind of system backs them up. We don't care where they are, what OS they're on. We don't care how many scopes you create. But you create these scopes, you put your different nodes in them, and then you can assign them to different users. So maybe when the Exchange admin logs in, all they see are the Exchange servers. They see all the backup information. They see what's happened. They see what's going to, hopefully they can kind of figure out what's going to happen in terms of growth. But they only see those systems. Maybe the Unix admins only see the Unix systems. So, or maybe you divide them up by applications, which is very common. You use some external source that has all the node and information. You feed it into Servergraph, and then we create scopes based on that. So you can see all of your Exchange servers together. You can see all of your Oracle servers together. You can divide them up by Unix Oracle servers and Windows Oracle servers. Whatever you want to do. I mean, we can divide that enterprise up however you want to do it, by data center, by business unit, so forth. And of course you get monitoring and you get TSM administration. And I know I'm kind of running out of time here, but I'll just show you a couple screenshots, some different reports. You can see backup summaries, make any kind of long-term trending report you want for any period of time. Again, we keep the data for as long as you want to. Average is probably about a year. And you have a full year. You can go back and see what happened in January versus what's happening in May or whatever, or August or September. And can just lots of different details and trends for a lot of different products. And this last one was doing it by node group or scope. Same thing. Node group is a TSM trend. We create our own scopes, but we do that in lots of different ways, usually using logic, or you can just click on which ones you want. But again, the logic would be like every system that has EXCH in the name and is assigned to the TSM server such and such or the net backup server such and such. You can do that logic however you want. You create scorecards to see what's happening with the nodes, like for the last few days. And again, I'm about done here with my death by PowerPoint. But the whole summary is, Servergraph, make sure that you're managing your enterprise and your backup budget, and they're not managing you. Again, going back to original title there. Make sure your entire enterprise is visible and understandable from that single pane of glass. It shows you how and where you are spending your money and where you need to spend it. If you've outgrown your current backup solution, it's the tool to determine where and how you can cut back, and if necessary, where you need to spend more money, where you have to spend more money. And it verifies that you can get your data back if the worst happened, and it proves that to your stakeholders and managers. So here's thank you, and hopefully we didn't miss any languages there. Hope everyone's still awake and listening. And I think maybe we might have some questions now, or at least we're going to open the floor for questions.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Yes, we will now open up for questions. If you would like to ask a question, you may do so using the chat window located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And we do have our first question. Do we get the Servergraph along with the TSM software, or is this a separate software that we need to buy? And if so, what is the one that comes with TSM?
Well, I can answer from the Servergraph side. IBM resells Servergraph because they had to do so. They realized that it is a heterogeneous world out there. Within IBM, I actually don't know this TSM tools that well, because obviously when I go to a site with an IBM group, it's because they have decided they need Servergraph. But now you got the OC that has some basic reporting tools built in, and of course you can run your own queries all day. You can write your own scripts and write queries. So I'm not sure I'm answering that question very well, but Servergraph has been around for a long time, and it started out as a TSM only product back in like 1999. So it is still kind of focused on TSM, but it doesn't come with TSM. It is a separate product. Did I answer that question effectively?
You did answer the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question is there any API that need to be integrated with TSM software or some agent like that?
Oh, awesome. No, there's with Servergraph, there's no agents you need at all. Like for TSM, we basically use DSMA DMC. You know, we actually run a monitor window 24/7, so we scrape everything off of that window. We're basically recreating the activity log, and that's just what we do. With there's different products, we contact them in different ways. For some of them, we actually do a database connection. Like obviously for Oracle, we're going to talk to the RMAN recovery database. With TSM, we're going to run DSMA DMC and watch some of the logs. With Net Backup, we're going to run some remote commands. With Data Domain, we're going to SSH in and collect data via commands. So we have different ways of collecting from different systems, but we never need an agent. We do have some agent options available if you have an enterprise where you just can't have good connectivity between systems and where you need to put something in like in a data center, but there's absolutely no agents required whatsoever.
Okay, great. Next question, how hard is Servergraph to maintain?
The Servergraph is pretty much an install it and forget it product. We install it, we configure collection. Depending on how large your enterprise is, that could take anywhere from 30 minutes to about an hour and a half. And once collection is running, the database maintains itself, everything maintains itself. You set up things like how long the data is stored for, and it just continues to run. You just then create users as you need them. Upgrades, major upgrades come about twice a year, so we have some kind of an upgrade out there. And that upgrade probably takes about 45 minutes or an hour, and you'll do it with one of our people. Sometimes the company will skip an upgrade and just do every other upgrade or whatever, depending upon their needs. But it basically is maintenance free once you give us the system and the time to install it and let us start collecting.
Great. Okay, next question. Does Rocket Servergraph require a dedicated server to install it, like a server/client architecture?
Well, we do need our own server. Could be a VM, could be a standalone. We don't care what you give us there. But so VMs are fine. Just about everybody, of course, in today's age runs this on a VM. But yeah, we do need a system. We need a Linux system. And again, if you don't really have Linux in your environment, we actually give you a VM appliance. So you just install our VM appliance and Servergraph's sitting there ready to run. Just have to configure it, and all the configuration is done from GUIs that you can run from your Windows desktop or wherever.
Okay, great. Next question, how does Servergraph handle its own DB backups?
So our database backups, again, we are running a MySQL database in the background, totally maintained by us. We dump that database. You could use your built-in TSM or Net Backup tools or whatever to back up that database, but the easiest way is just to let us back ourselves up. We'll write a dump file every day to a position, and we also have some other backup requests. So you just set up your backup environment, it backs up the dump file, which gets the whole database. You back up a few other configuration files, and then if necessary, the Servergraph server is very easy to recreate.
Perfect. Another question here. How many systems does Servergraph take?
So a single system, even if you have a very large environment like thousands of nodes, we can still run in a single system. It'll be a large system, but not outrageously so. I mean, probably 500 gigabytes of storage and a fair amount of memory and a pretty powerful CPU. But that's all we need is that one system. And again, if you have an environment where you feel like you have like a data center that doesn't have very good connectivity, we have a little remote collector you can put out there. And again, that's not because you need to have it, it's just in case it works better for you. And that little remote collector just runs on a very small VM. Could be a Windows VM, could be a Linux VM, could even be an existing backup server that's not real busy because it doesn't do much. But you do have that option if you want to put it on multiple systems, but we never need multiple systems. We only need one system.
Okay, great. Next question. How many users can use Servergraph at one time?
So never really hit a number there. We have some companies that have, hundreds of users, and quite a few companies will just have 4 or 5. But it doesn't really matter. You can put on 100 users. You can set up AD so that your, LDAP or your AD through Windows, so that authenticates the user. You still need to set up the user IDs, but that makes management a little easier. So as many users as you need. And again, those users are restricted however you want to restrict them. Maybe they just see a very small number of reports, or maybe they see everything, or maybe they just see a small number of nodes, 1 or 2 scopes. Maybe they see them all. That's totally up to you. You have incredible, I call it ridiculous granularity in terms of how you can grant access to Servergraph.
Okay, great. Are there any prerequisites for Servergraph, like Java version, etc.?
Just the basics. For the system we install it on, we have a number of prerequisites. For users who are actually using the interface, it makes it a lot easier if you have IE 10 or later, so they can use HTML5. If you just can't support a product that will use HTML5, like Firefox or Chrome or IE 10 or later, then we can set it up to use Flash. But so you can use like your IE8, because a lot of corporations still are stuck on IE8 out there. But basically that's what you have to have, is a browser you can work with it. And for those of you who would actually manage the product or manage TSM, those specific people would need on their system or on a system Java 8, so that they can run some of our admin consoles. But again, that not everyone needs the admin consoles, and you don't use them every day. So basically just a pretty basic setup.
Okay, perfect. Next question. Can we set up different users, like admin, operator, or even some users with limited access to the Servergraph console?
Yeah, and that's one of the great strengths of the whole product, both the TSM admin console we include, because TSM is not very granular in terms of giving access to people, but Servergraph is, like I said, ridiculously granular. And the same with the GUI product. You can control right down to the report level. There's like 100 canned reports. You can choose someone who only can see 5 of them or 6, and they can only see 1 scope. And again, that scope is maintained either manually or via some logic that you built into the system, or even by an external source. So you have total control over what users can see, what they can't see. And again, this is not just for a negative for restricting people, it's for empowering them, because if you have an Exchange admin and wants to see what's happening with their Exchange servers, he or she doesn't want to see all the Servergraph. They don't want to see the 5,000 nodes that you've got in your enterprise. They just want to see their nodes, their enterprise systems. So yeah, Servergraph's all about that. It's been built for all these years to be based on controlling access, empowering people by giving them what they need. And that's really at the core of the product.
Okay, great. Next question. For the TSM management console, how manageable is the user access?
So, and that's the place where, again, it really shines, because we actually have some companies who, by policy, only allow their users to use the Servergraph TSM admin console. And I don't think you want to do that, because for obvious reasons, you don't want to limit people. But with the TSM admin console, you can control access to everything. Now, let's say you've got a user out there. You want them to be able to do 3 things. One of those things requires a high level of TSM access, and the rest of them are just basically analytical things. With TSM, you really can't do that. You have to give them a login that allows them to do the most advanced thing they do. But with Servergraph, you do attach a TSM admin account to their user ID, but they never see the password for it. It's invisible to them. All they see is the GUI for the TSM admin console from Servergraph. And when they log into that, they only see the things that you've allowed them to do. And again, it's very, very granular. Maybe you're actually allowing them to reset admin passwords, but you're not allowing them to do other basic things. You can do that. You have, of all the, there are like hundreds of different levels of security there. I don't want to say infinite because obviously it's not infinite, but there are just hundreds of different levels of security you can give there and control them. And also you then have an audit trail for every single thing they do. Because maybe you've got people logging in at night using the same ID on TSM, but with Servergraph, we're going to track their Servergraph ID. We're going to put everything they do into our audit database, and you can look at that at any time, and it lasts forever. We save it forever.
Perfect. Here's another question. Can you give an example of a company who got a payoff from using Servergraph?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was kind of the anecdote, and we could give you a lot, and we have various company references. But I mean, for me personally, the biggest one was the company that was about to spend. They were in a lot of internal turmoil because they just brought in a lot of new hardware resources, and they were not meeting their backup windows. And this didn't happen to be a TSM company, but it doesn't matter because it works the same. But I went in there and I used Servergraph. I installed Servergraph, let it run for a couple of weeks, and then I went in there and used my Servergraph tools to do a health check. And I just pointed out to them, this is why all that new hardware you just bought that was scaled by the hardware people to meet your needs doesn't meet your needs. You're just not using it efficiently. And so with Servergraph, I was able to point out to them exactly what was wrong, what was going on, and that saved them a huge purchase. I mean, the product paid for itself 2 or 3 times over, in the first couple of weeks right then and there. Now, for other companies who maybe don't, hopefully not you, who don't have a big issue like that to deal with, it's just a matter of saving money day to day. I mean, it really is. Like if you're on the verge of really trying to get someone new hired onto your team, a product like Servergraph, depending on your needs, can really change things so that you don't need that new person, at least not yet. It can take some people who you're maybe really mentoring and working with every day and empower them to do more, both because you can limit what they can do and because you can give them tools to do those things more efficiently. I mean, the payoff is definitely there. It's there in terms of, again, managing what you're using intelligently, seeing what's growing the fastest. I know one problem with DBAs is they tend to have control over their own backups, but you don't always have a quick view as to what they're doing with those backups. And we give you that view. We let you manage those resources and different tiers of storage and so forth. So again, that's a little bit of a marketing kind of a salesy answer, but the reason why is in the real world, and we have a lot of customers with Servergraph, been around since 1999, and the vast majority of those customers, much higher than for most products, renew their maintenance every year, is because they're getting a very good payoff out of it. It's worth it to them to keep it going, and they become reliant upon it. And you talk to some people who've had Servergraph and really utilize it to its full potential, and they can't imagine not having a product like that, especially in today's world of different systems.
Okay, great. We have a few more questions that have come in here. Can we execute TSM commands from Servergraph console?
From the TSM admin console you can. If you set that up and configure it, that's the piece that requires Java 8 that I was talking about. And yeah, you can run, again, there's 2 levels of security there. There's the TSM admin ID assigned to your user, and then there's what Servergraph allows you to do. And you can only do things that are common denominators between those 2. So 2 different levels of security. You get TSM security, which is not very granular, and Servergraph security, which is extraordinarily granular. So yeah, you can run any command. I mean, this is a soup to nuts product. And it's very serious. We actually have some financial customers out there who, by corporate policy, only allow TSM management to go through Servergraph. And there's various reasons for that, but the biggest reason is control and auditing, and making sure that everyone is accountable for what they're doing and what they're going to do. But beyond that, if you don't have those, and nobody wants those restrictions, they just have to exist in some environments. But it still empowers you to do more, because even if you're a guy who can do everything on the command line, sometimes it's nice just to have a tool that you can access multiple TSM servers at one time, do a couple of clicks, and run a command that would take you 5 minutes to type out with just a click. Sometimes that's helpful for all of us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question. Is it possible to enable additional security levels in Servergraph like SSL and HTTPS?
Yeah, we have we have HTTPS, so that'll give you that secured access if you want. Of course, the biggest security is that you'll probably run this behind your firewall. You could expose it to the outside world, but most companies choose not to. They let, to the extent that they expose the outside world, they usually do it through emails or through other options that you have. Yeah, you do have that protection, and of course, within Servergraph, we don't know what's been backed up. We only have the metadata as to how it was backed up, how much was backed up, and so forth. So, if Servergraph is very well protected, and you can use, port 443 HTTPS, totally up to you and what your security needs are.
Perfect. Next question. Do you have a trial software to test in our environment, or do we need to purchase a license?
Love to do POCs, proofs of concept. Just give us a Linux box, and a little bit of your time will help you install it, configure it. Again, you can also use that downloadable VM appliance we talked about if you're using VM. Just download the appliance, pop it into place. You get a CentOS VM that has Servergraph pre-installed on it, and make a few switches to it, and you're up and running very quickly. Now, those are things that you actually can. If you go to our site and follow the steps, you actually can download those things on your own. But again, I think it works a little better if you work with us, because we've done this a million times. We can help you out, make sure it's all collecting well. And again, you're welcome to do a POC on it, see it in your enterprise. And you can even do a cloud POC. That's where instead of installing the full Servergraph product, we just install that very small collector I talked about, and then you have it report to one of our cloud servers. So you can see your information, but you don't have to quite do a full Servergraph install. So yeah, we love POCs.
Perfect. Next question. I can understand how tiered data structuring is needed to manage all the growing data, but my experience is that getting each data owner to honestly classify their data is never easy and sometimes impossible. How does a monitoring analysis product solve that?
That's a great question, and obviously it's not the panacea to that. Everybody thinks their data is critical. It's usually, they can usually just say it's critical, whether it is or not, because there's usually not any kind of a kickback for that. But what you do get with Servergraph, even if you're not going to do chargeback, you're not going to charge them back for what they're doing, you can do showback, both to them and to their management, saying, look, this is what this department says is critical, so we're putting in all of our Tier 1 data. Look how much data they have. Look how fast it's growing. Is this really being responsible? Is this really managing the company resources? So you're still relying upon people to be honest and work with you to set up proper tiering of their data, but at least it gives you tools that you can do showback as to what they're doing, or if your company decides it's a problem, you can start doing chargeback. And once Servergraph's installed, you can start out by doing showback, and then if you get to the chargeback level, there's nothing else to buy. Servergraph is one product. There's no paid add-ons to it at all. You can go right to doing chargeback, and their department starts getting a bill. Or maybe you start billing them over a certain amount. You have lots of options there. You do showback to a certain amount, and then at some point you do chargeback. But everybody has that problem. There's no quick answer to it because a lot of it tends to be political. But at least you've got the analysis to tell them how much they're using, how fast they're growing, and let their management know, and let your management know why you need to keep buying more resources because such and such a department says everything's Tier 1 and is filling up your Tier 1 resources.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we've actually covered all of the questions. So thank you, Steve, for offering your time and sharing your knowledge with us. That was a great presentation.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for attending and staying awake. And I see a lot of people stayed on the whole call, so thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Yeah, again, thank you all for attending. Please do take a few moments to fill out your post-survey event. Your input is very important to us, and this concludes today's conference. You may now disconnect.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.